Thank you, Muhammad. And without further delay, I will call on Ms. Ayat Oraby to come to the podium. You prefer to speak from the table as you like. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. I really like to thank all the organizers for bringing such an event to meet with all the young faces that I see here today, and also to thank all Egyptians, Canadians that are attending the event today. Let me just, before I start my speech, to give you a little brief about myself, to know who am I and what background I came from, and how I became against the coup in Egypt. My name is Ayat Oraby, and I'm an Egyptian journalist. I used to work in Egyptian TV. This is how I started my working life in Egyptian TV. And as you know, or maybe you don't know, as someone working in Egyptian TV, that has to belong to Egypt government. And this is how I was actually until I left the country. I left the country a long time ago. I've been in the state for 21 years since I got married, and I moved with my husband, and I started to build my family. I have 4 children, 2 of them in college and 2 in elementary school, and I was in Egyptian TVs until 2001. Then I quit because I had to work for Arab radio and television, which is called ART. I used to have 2 famous programs in that TV. I got an award for the best Arab announcer or presenter in America for 3 years in a row. And this is just a brief background about me, to know I'm not from Muslim Brotherhood. I'm not presenting anyone from Muslim Brotherhood, because since I was activist against the coup, that was the threatening, and that was, they say that about me and about anyone actually against the coup. If you are against the coup, against the regime, so you are Muslim Brotherhood. So I don't know how you know how Muslim Brotherhood look like, but actually I am not. But anyway. I'd like to thank you all, people who believe in human rights issue in Egypt and Gaza. And I'm gonna start actually right away from one event that occurred in Egypt, that was the Rabaa massacre. In 12 hours, thousands of peaceful protesters were killed and others thousands injured in removing Rabaa city last year, specifically on August 14, 2013. And I will get actually to the media role and how they played a big role after I just give you the brief presentation about what happened exactly that day, because I want you to live in the situation. I had a video, but it's not available now, about the media and about how they celebrate the people who were killed in Rabaa, to just to literally live in, but I will, I don't know why it's not here, but it's okay. Anyway, that day, a lot of people were killed, and a lot of people were swift to rescue their besieged fellow countrymen, but were brutally driven away in a massacre that continued in 12 hours. All kinds of arms were used against peaceful, unarmed protesters. Sniper rifles from rooftops. And this is, I actually saw on TV, and people were in Rabaa sit-in, they said that they used to see the snipers just killing people from rooftops around the sit-in. Tear gas, helicopter, military bulldozers to storm in the sit-in camp. You can just imagine, helicopter, sit-in, gas, everything just against peaceful people that the media back then used to say, oh, this sit-in has a lot of weapons. If there were weapon, actually, you won't even have 1,000 or 2,000 people were killed. That would be even more. That day, they did not discriminate between women, children, and old people. The only crimes those protesters committed was to refuse a military coup, in the course of which the first democratically elected president was ousted and kidnapped. I say kidnapped because this is what exactly happened. He was not just ousted, he was kidnapped 3 days before the military coup. The military coup was on July the 3rd, after what they call it demonstration against him on the June 30th, but he was kidnapped even before that day. So this is why when I appear on the media, I always say he was kidnapped. And as I told you, the only crime those people committed was just because they refused the military coup. Some eyewitness, and I have one right here in this hall. If we have 2 minutes, I would like to invite her. She was in Rabah sit-in, and she saw everything, and I would invite her after I finish my speech to just tell you what exactly happened, what she saw. And she eyewitnessed, so maybe you believe her even more than a media person just like me. Anyway, some eyewitness even said that police dogs were sent in to get rid of any human remains due to the use of the explosive bullets that exploded heads and bellies of the protesters. The coup militia, this is how I call it also, composed of both the Egyptian army and police forces, set both camps in Giza and Rabah ablaze and burned them. I hope we have some pictures here to see how they burned those camps. And some of them actually were even taken down by snipers while leaving the massacre that day, later that day. Some of those who remained alive were taken prisoners and paraded on the government TV stations. And some other managed to flee the massacre. Women were shot down, kicked and beaten, detained and humiliated. Some women were even forced to bow and kiss the military shoes of the coup militia members. Governments of the world did not even dare to take serious measures against those criminals, while the whole world remained silent. Families and martyrs were searching for the corpse of their beloved ones. Some of the corpses were loaded by military bulldozers and moved to collective graves in the desert outside Cairo. According actually to some eyewitnesses, it is worse than that the number killed in only 12 hours exceeded the number of civilians killed over a month in Gaza. And those people killed in Gaza, they did not even killed by their own government, but the people were killed in Gaza, they were killed by the Israelis, Air Force, as you know. After the massacre, more than 40,000 people were detained and tortured. Women paid a heavy toll. I always talk about women specifically because I have a magazine in America called This One specifically, we talk about women and women rights. So I cared more about women, but for this case, I care about all Egyptians. But anyway, Women paid heavy toll and were raped, and only 50 cases were recorded. One girl, actually, I saw her mom on YouTube, and I hope I will give you like the name of the tape so you can even watch it. One woman where she was visiting her daughter in the prison, and she was asking her daughter, "What do you want me to bring next time?" And she said, "A birth control pills." You can imagine what's happening inside the prisons to girls get raped by the forces over there. The world actually continued to remain silent, and the Egyptians continued to bleed their freedom and their blood. The date of 14th of August 2013 will remain a black stain in the face of humanity. A day in which thousands of innocent civilians were killed in the worst massacre ever in the modern human history, according to Human Rights Watch reports. Today, we commemorate those who paid their blood for defending freedom and democracy. Was a brief description, as I told you before, about what happened specifically that day. Now I will give you more details about violations that occurred in Egypt since January 2011. Security forces have been practicing all forms of violation of human rights. Female protesters, university students, activists, journalists have been exposed to countless assaults, whether physically or verbally. I remember in January 2014, in the memory of January 2011, we have a memory every year since that day. On that day, the press conference was held by several human rights groups, revealed shocking reports of security forces violations against Egyptians in a 3-year-old revolution that is still making its way among cause and anarchy. The press conference was under the title of Injustice Arms, and journalists syndicate, the member that took part in the conference were Al Nadim Center, Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights, the European Economic Cooperation Center, and Hisham Mubarak Law Center, and Nazra of Feminist Studies. No military coups also that was part of the press conference. In the report prepared by the human organizations that took part in the conference under the name Injustice Arm, the Ministry of Interior does not need a law to practice oppression. However, the state invent new law violation citizen rights, such as protest law, that led to arresting a huge number of youth, and the score are waiting to be verified. The report added that the security forces in Egypt released whose detention appeared more harmful than release, like girls, journalists, and lawyers, but keep youth unknown for media. They could not remain for weeks in unknown places until their families know where they are, where their location. They just take them any place, and they did not even record them. So this is why some of human rights reports, they couldn't have a record of the numbers were detained in Egypt prisons until now. All what they know is 26,000 people, now raised to 40,000 people, and the real numbers even worse. They said over 120,000 people, Egyptian people in the prisons. And even the human rights report, 2 minutes is not enough. I have a lot to say about Egyptian media, so I'm gonna steal 2 more minutes, okay? It's okay, right? Okay, the human rights report said it's 980 people were killed in 12 hours in the worst massacre ever in the modern human history. But the real number, over 6,000 people, but the human rights organization could not have the record because the people were burned and the bulldozer actually took them away. So they couldn't find identifications, they couldn't find anything to have the record, to have it written in the reports. Since July 2013, university students, just like you guys, you have been here in Canada, you are Canadian, you have all the freedom to, if you have any a different opinion, you can just go and say it. But in Egypt, no, you can't. Since that day, university students have been at the forefront battling the military coup. In the last 14 months, demonstrators was the most vibrant and determined group resisting the return of Mubarak regime. I'm gonna go very quick to the media, actually, right away because he's raising the 2 minutes for me. So I'm just gonna go to the media, what happened, what the media actually did, what's the role, and but anyway, let me just go back quick to around 5,000 people and coup Egyptians at least were massacred according to the press report since the 3rd of July coup. And up till now, police and army troops committed more than 12 massacres, starting with Bain al-Sarayat. Of course, those names you're not gonna be familiar with them, but I'm gonna say it because some Egyptian people they know the names very well. Bain al-Sarayat massacre, passing by Republican Guard massacre, and the Purim massacre, and Rabaa massacre. About 25 women and 41 minors were killed, according to the Human Rights Watch report. The incidents of systematic, broad range killing in Rabaa and others committed by the security forces and Egyptian army as well. 44,000 people among the report in the prisons, but the reality is more than 120,000 people in the prisons. The Egyptian women actually were subject to the great violation under the coup, and particularly the university students. To highlight what the Egyptian media role in Morsi's time, which is the first elected president, Egyptian media outlet played a key role in splitting Egypt nation. Now, Egypt nation is not the nation that we used to live in. We used to live in one nation. Now, it's a splitted nation because Egypt have a big gap now since the June 30 protest and the coup. The first part that I will explain about what happened, all the documented human rights abuse and those abuses a year ago was by the Egyptian media. Egyptian media was celebrated in the Egyptian TVs. People work in the media were congratulating each other and congratulating the nation when Egyptian army and security forces removed the sit-in of Morsi's supporter in Rabaa and Nahda Square. And this is what we and the latest report from Human Rights Watch report called a massacre. Stories about Muslim Brotherhood selling Suez Canal